Greetings and welcome to StabloidNews. Today we are taking a look at the real story behind Bram Stoker's Dracula. Was it all from the twisted mind of an Irish author, or is it based on true history, events, and people investigated by the late Bram Stoker? We shall do some research and find out today how the 1897 novel came to grace the pages of horror history. Our exploration takes us back to 1890 when Bram Stoker, a 45-year-old man, ventured into the subscription library in Whitby, England, to request a specific title, a volume called The Account of Principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia by William Wilkinson. Not many souls were even aware the library had it on hand. It was only granted to those who asked for it. Any who wished to read was sure to be watched as they perused the pages. It was a rare title. Broker didn't read the whole book. He merely turned to a specific section and made notes in his journal, then returned the tome to the librarian. His next stop was the Whitby Museum, where he inspected a set of maps to put together a route, starting in the centre of London, England, and concluding atop a mountain deep within the moor of Romania. This set of coordinates was noted in his journal and confirmed. Bram then headed down to Whitby Harbour and spoke with the members of the Royal Coast Guard. They spoke of a sailing vessel, the Dimitri, that had become shipwrecked ashore inside a protective harbour, and only a few of the crew had survived. The ship, originating from the European dock of Varna, hosted some mysterious cargo in its contents, crates of earth. When investigating the damaged ship, the rescue workers speculated to seeing a large black dog resembling the Beast of Barghest of old Yorkshire mythology. They told tales of it escaping from the hull of the ship and ascending the 199-step staircase in the Tate Sands beach with ease. This path led directly to the graveyard at the St. Mary's Church. He looked up at the church, then at the Whitby Abbey adjacent to it on the cliff. He visualized a dark chamber at the top of the central tower. He then proceeded to review his journal, which contained the notes from the library book. Voivode, Dracula. Dracula, in Wallachian language, means devil. Wallachians were accustomed to give it as a surname to any person who rendered himself conspicuous either by courage, cruel actions, or cunning. It is important to note that voivode is a local governor or ruler in Central or Eastern Europe, in particular a semi-independent ruler of Transylvania. 4 months earlier, at a dinner, Mr. Stoker's friend, Arminus Vanbury, spoke of the book and gave direction on where to focus his search: the library. The final piece of his decade-long crusade to unravel a mystery. It all began to take form, but was the form of this world. Within the notes of his journal there was a strange scribbling of the name Count Vampire, but it had been crossed out and replaced with the name we all now know as Count Dracula. It all made sense to Bram. For fans of the novel Dracula, the information above takes on a familiar note. We all know the name. There's the graveyard, the abbey, the dog, and of course the ship. But it was called the Demeter, not the Dimitri. A moment where the lines blur between fact and fiction. When Bram Stoker wrote his iconic novel, the original preface, which was published in Macht Murkana, or Power of Darkness, the Icelandic version of his story, it included this passage: "I am quite convinced that there is no doubt whatever that the events here described really took place, however unbelievable and incomprehensible they may appear at first. And I am further convinced that they must always remain to some extent incomprehensible." He also claimed that many of the characters portrayed in the novel were real people. He says, "All the people who have willingly or unwillingly played a part in this remarkable story are known generally and well respected. Both Jonathan Harker and his wife, who is a woman of character, and Dr. Stewart are my friends and have been so for many years, and I have never doubted that they were telling the truth." The chilling tale behind Dracula was never intended to serve as fiction, but perhaps a warning of a supernatural evil, a living nightmare that he found to be all too real. However, his editor, Otto Kilman, scared of the impact of presenting such a tale as true, returned the script Bram had presented, responding with a straightforward no. When questioned, he explained that London was still recovering from a string of horrific murders in Whitechapel, the ones performed by who we all know as Jack the Ripper. And the killer was still on the loose, so in his eyes, they couldn't publish his story without risking the chance of bringing about mass hysteria. Changes had to be made. The factual side and true events would need to be removed or changed, or it wouldn't happen at all. It would also be in the fiction shelves. Or just not on the shelves. On May 26, 1897, the novel was finally released, but the first 101 pages had been taken away. Several modifications had been made to the original text, the epilogue shortened, changing Dracula's fate. Thousands of words had disappeared like a bat into the night. Bram's message or warning, once clear and succinct, had become lost and muddled in the final release we've all come to know. Jumping forward to 1980, discovered in a barn in Pennsylvania was the original Dracula manuscript, but nobody could tell us how it travelled all the way across the Atlantic. That manuscript began on page 102. Jonathan Harker's travel on the train? Once upon a time, the beginning of the story was actually right in the midst of the narrative. What was the original 101 pages? What was too terrifying and real to be made public? Stoker, being the cheeky Irish sleuth he is, left clues if you looked in the right places. Within the Icelandic first edition mentioned earlier, Bram left not only his original preface in full, but parts of his original version of the story. More hints can be found in the short story Dracula's Guest, now known as an excerpt from the original text, not to mention his notes, his journals, and other first editions around the globe. Unable to tell the story he intended, he divided it up, and like the undead, it lived on, waiting to be discovered. Of course, we can't talk about the history of truth and fiction without the mention of Vlad III, known as Vlad the Impaler. Earning his fearsome title for impaling 20,000 and killing an estimated 80,000 people, Vlad Dracula committed some of history's grisliest acts as ruler of the 15th century Wallachia. It wasn't stated, but many believe the bloodthirsty count was partly inspired by Vlad the Impaler. The history of the real Dracula has surely been exaggerated over the centuries. The actual legend behind Vlad the Impaler is way darker than Bram Stoker's wildest imagination. Born the son of a queen and fathered by Vlad II Dracula, whose surname translates to dragon, given to him by the Christian crusading order known as the Order of the Dragon. After his father's rule was overthrown, he took on the name Vlad Dracula, meaning son of the dragon, beginning his reign of terror. Taking back his father's throne, it was told of him hosting a banquet and inviting his opposition. It didn't take long before the festivities turned bloody. Vlad's guests were then stabbed to death and impaled on spikes. According to lore, he was even said to dine while surrounded by his skewered, lifeless enemies, even dipping his bread in their blood. A sinister soup. Sultan Mehmed II, known for atrocities of his own, was shocked after seeing the decaying corpses of about 23,000 of his own men lined up for miles, many again on stakes. He was known to have responded, "How can we despoil of his estates a man who is not afraid to defend it by such means as these?" announcing that anyone willing to go to such lengths to save his kingdom deserved to keep it. They retreated the following day. Although Count Dracula and Vlad the Impaler share a few similarities, they bore a similar name, both lived in Eastern Europe inside towering castles, and they shared a taste for blood. Although for the latter, that's just rumors. Speculation still rolls to this day if the story is real, or just a twisted vision of a now infamous Irishman. A cracked article mentions the preface of the original edition, condemning it as the use of verisimilitude, meaning the appearance of being true or real. Similar to how shows or movies say based on true events or based on a true story, but take all the bits they find intriguing and then add them to the story manufactured to sell tickets, or in this case, books. But then why continually hide or edit the text? Many movies, theories, rumors, and terrible tales have become of these men. It's interesting to explore the reality, and even if it's all just stories and hearsay, it's crazy to imagine that perhaps in the shadows hides another world we didn't even know exists. And that's all I've got today. I really enjoyed making this episode and doing the research on Bram Stoker and Vlad the Impaler. I'd like to do more of this stuff. It sparked my interest after I played Bram Stoker's Dracula on the SNES and stumbled across this article. So if you'd like to see more, then like and subscribe and let us know in the comments below of any subjects that you'd like to hear about. Alright, thanks for watching, and until next time, stay wicked!